Okay. So we had done the verse number third, and we were about to start the verse number five. In the verse number three of the chapter 14, Bhagavan is sort of trying to explain that he first mentions that I'm going to tell you that Jnanam Jnanam Uttamam, the knowledge which is superior among all the knowledges, and there we know in the first verse, he was hinting at this particular jnana, which is jnana sadhana, a method of knowledge which is superior to the methods of knowledge where there's a lot of information about karma kanda. And yad jnatva munaya sarve param siddhim mito gataha. So he sort of is referring to different kinds of sukha and all other maharshis who have got self knowledge, and they definitely did not get self knowledge by virtue of rituals, but through atma chintana. Idam jnanam upasritya. And then he's saying that by this is stutyartha, in the sense, in order for praising jnana sadhana, lest somebody gets a little excited about the rituals, karma yoga and jnana yoga, because he mentioned there are four paths to getting me. There are four categories of people: those who are the Vedanta jnana yogis, and they are the Sankhya yogis. That means those who are into the Raja Yoga, the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, and stuff like that. And third category are the karma yogis, and people who don't even know the secret of sadhana, those who are completely doing dedicated devotional love for me and surrender to me, and Shruti Parayana, they also get me. Now here is sort of glorifying the Jnana Yoga. Sargepi no pajayante. They are absolutely not reborn and they are not even affected. Now, on this verse number two, there is a little interesting stuff in the Nilakantha. So I'm just reading a couple of sentences which may be interesting for you. Idam jnanam vishay rupa vikalpa vinirmuktam upasitya. Now, the kind of jnanas that we know normally, like pratyakya, anumana, inferential knowledge, or direct perceptual knowledge, what is the kind of knowledge this is? This knowledge always presumes there is a knower, there is a vishayi, and there is something which is the object of knowledge, which is vishaya. So there is an object of knowledge like this pen or pencil, and I'm looking at it. And this jnana is here, that pratyaya in me. So Vishaya, Vishayi, there is always a relationship. But in the Vedanta jnana, this is not about a pen or a pencil or any knowledge which is relating to the externality. Idam tvena, this is that. No, it's not like that. It's aham pratyaya. I am. You're essentially being aware of your own existence, being aware of the self. And therefore, he's saying that beautiful sentence Vishaya Vishay Rupa Vikalpa Vinirmuktaha. There is no alternative. There is no disjunction between the object and subject upashritya. That is when you follow this. If you upasita is not doing upasana, but here by doing practice of this particular way of knowing Mama Ishwarasya Sadharmyam. Now, what is that sadharmya? Because you can never be equal to Brahman, you are never different. If you are different, then you will be same as Brahman, but you are always same. It's only layers of ignorance which sort of tells us that we are not equal. So sadharmya means sarvatmatvam, sarva niyantritvam. So Bhagavan controls everything. Of course, we are not controlling everything, but as consciousness, we are not different from the Lord. We are ignorant fools when we're identified with the body and our emotions. When we drop this body and our emotions and thoughts, what remains is pure consciousness. Sarva niyantriyate, sarva bhava adhishtatritvam, that foundation. All the bhavas, whatever exists, there is a foundation of it. And that adhishtatritvam, when we get it, then he's saying, ityadi sadharmyam. So these are the dharma samyam. You get that similarity. Sadharmyam agataha tatha cha srutyaha ya evam veda aham brahmasmi iti sa idam sarvam bhavati. The one who knows himself as I am Brahma, that kind of pratyaya he has got. Then there is a tripiti hina chaitanya. So there is absolutely no division between the knower, the known, and the process of knowing. Jnana, Jnata, and Jnaya. This kind of tripiti gets dissolved. Sarvasya Vashi, the one who controls everyone. Sarvasya Ishanaha, the boss, the lord of the universe, of everything. Sarvasya Adhipatihi, and he's the ruler of everyone. Who is that? The Brahman. That Drik Chaitanya Swarupa, that Drashta. That is what he becomes. Sa no sadhuna karmana bhuyan eva asadhuna kanyan. That particular person, when he reaches that ultimate stage, neither you reach there through any papa karma or punya karma. If sadhu karma is only for antakarna suddhi, that will prepare the ground for atma jnana, for atma vichara. It doesn't give you liberation in that sense. Iti jnana phalam ईश्वर साधर्म्यम प्राप्तिम आहु किंच भूषुंडी प्रवृत्तयः ज्ञान बलादेव सर्गेपि न जायन्ते. There is this story about the Bhushundi Kaka Bhushundi. Now, if you go to Puri temple, in front of Bimala temple, they tell you that this is Bhushundi Kaka or Kaka Bhushundi. There was this character who was apparently a person from inferior social background, was living with a certain very learned Brahmin. And what happened was that this learned Brahmin had given him a lot of knowledge. Now, this fellow was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, but he always criticized and hated the devotees of Vishnu and made fun of him. And then he lands up with an Acharya, who is a very good guy, but this Acharya kind of gives him knowledge gives him some knowledge, but he tells him that don't try to make fun of. But he gives the Shiva mantra and stuff like that. He becomes very arrogant after that. And then once he makes fun of his own teacher in a temple, and Lord Shiva loses his temper and he curses him and says that you go and become a snake and you'll be reborn as a snake 1,000 times. Now, this Bhusundi Kaka, this character who was a poor guy, maybe a farmer or something, is reborn as a snake. But the guru is very compassionate, even though he was misbehaved by his own disciple. He had given him mantra, so he propitiates Lord Shiva, pacifies him, and says that kindly liberate my student. He has misbehaved with me, but I forgive him. And Lord Shiva, what he does is he says, I can give him one boon that he will not suffer any pain when he is born and when he abandons the body and he dies. He will have the memory of all life so that he becomes a jnani. And I also give him the blessing that he'll also grow some devotion in him about Lord Ram. So he will not criticize the Vaishnavas. That is what he tells, and that's how this guy is a snake and he is reborn again and again without any problem. And finally, what happens in the last birth is reborn as a Brahmin. And he goes and he starts learning Shastras. He goes to one great monk and then he sort of, but he does a lot of kutarka with him. He argues, his purva sanskaras are there. He's always a very egoistic person. So he says that you are kind of a, you're behaving like an outcast kind of thing. And he curses him and he makes him a crow. But he gives him that, then he becomes a crow and flies away. He's cursed by his teacher. But that teacher is very compassionate. He calls him back and he gives him Rama mantra and he gives him a lot of blessings. So then he does sadhana and he gets liberated. But because he got the top secret mantra for liberation, for Atma Jnana, this Kaka Bhushundi did not want to abandon his Kaka Sarira. He could have become Moksha, he could have got, but now he will never die because he's immortal, he has got self realization, but he sticks to that Kaka Sarira, that body, the crow's body. He's a little attached to that crow's body. He continues to live in that crow's body even in the Kali Yuga. That is the story. That's why you have that crow's, statue sort of thing, a small stone piece where you have that Kaka, Bhushanda Kaka in the Puri temple who is worshipped. Now, this guy is a Trikala Drashta. He can tell because he's Atmagyani. There is a reference to him in the Nilakanti saying, Kincha Bhushandi Prabhutayaha. These sort of Amara Atmas who are completely Atmagyani, irrespective of whatever physical form they have. Jnana Valadeva, because of their jnana, that Atma Jnana, Sargepi na jayante. Whether there is pralaya or there is punasrishti, Bhushandi will not be affected. And he's saying, Sargepi na jayanti, pralaya kalepi tat tad bhuta bhavam gachanto na pralayagni divhire vyathante vyatham prapnuvanti. So in the whole conflagration, you have everything kind of is doused in fire and burning to sand or ash, but they are not affected by it because they are Atma Jnanis. Idam Shlokodvayam Bhashye Bhakshamana Jnana Stutyarthatvena Eva Vakhyatam. He's saying it is much better to make sense of these two verses as glorification of Jnana Yoga as discussed by Sankaracharya. That is what Nilakanta sort of is speaking, which is a very sound advice. Tad Jnanam Upashritya means Jnana Sadhanam Anustheya iti padartha. This is the meaning of this sentence. That you have to do Jnana Yoga, Sravana Manana Nididhyasana, that is what is praised. In the next verse, now he'll tell about that Jnana. And what is that Jnana? How Sattva, Tama, and Rajas, these gunas, are playing games with us, as we had mentioned in the introduction from Sankaranandi. How do they? These are the details about what kind of modifications our minds do undergo under the influence of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, so that we can remove these pratibandhakas. Now, there is another interesting thing that you need to remember, which is there in Vedanta. One is pratibandhaka, the other one is badha. There is a difference between badha and pratibandhaka. Now, you see a snake, and then you switch on the lamp, then you see the rope. The sarpa jnana is badhita, it is removed. But first you had sarpa jnana. And how badha happens? With the adhisthana jnana. What is the real thing that you see? The sarpatvena avabhasamanam sarpam. Sarpatvena avabhasanam. That becomes badhitam. Okay. How? Kena prakarena? Rajju iti jnanena badhitam. Because it's a rope. That kind of jnana, that is the adhisthana. So when you have awareness of that particular adhisthana, the foundation, the sarpa avhasa jnana, that becomes removed, destroyed. Similarly, sansara jnana is the abhavhasamana jnanam. That is the wrong knowledge we have, faulty knowledge. How it will be badhita? That when we have real knowledge that this is mithya, the sansara is mithya and the adhisthana is Brahman. We get it, then the sansara may remain, but it is badhita. What is pratibandhaka? We have maya and avidya. Therefore, the Brahma particular thing, even though it is true, it is not appearing. That is pratibandha. Pratibandha is what is obstructing jnana sadhana. And when you have jnana sadhana, mithya jnana becomes badhita. Badhita is post facto. Pratibandha is what is prior to a particular faulty knowledge which takes birth in you. Then Bhagavan in verse number 2 is mentioning how his abhinna nimitta upadana karana, what is Maya is the upadana karana, the material cause of this universe. Bhagavan or Ishvara is the father, he is the nimitta karanam. Metaphorically, he's saying that I do virya adhana in the verse number 3, Mama Yonir Mahat Brahma. That is Mahat, that Mahatattva. Brahma, because it's karyabhyoh mahat. It's much bigger because karana is always bigger than cause or effect. Tasmin garbham dadhamyaham. I do that garbha adhana. What is that garbha? The bija of Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha is the cause of everything. He creates. Hiranyagarbha is Brahma or Sutratma. And I put the bija adhana to give birth to him. And then he creates the samsara. Sambhava sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata. Sarva bhutanam tataha sambhavaha bhavati. It becomes possible for all other material realities to emerge. That is what he mentioned. And we had done the Sankara Bhashya. Nilak, Madhusudan we had done largely. Maybe there was a little left, and I will quickly sort of finish that. Madhusudana, what I'm saying, idamiti. Okay. Tasmaha. Tasyaha siddhehe ekantikatvam darsayati idamiti. Idam jnano, no, that we have finished. We will do the verse number 3. And Tadevan prasangsaya srotaram abhimukikritya Parama Ishvara Adhinayoho Prakriti Purushayah. That Purusha is Kshetrajna or Para Prakriti. And Prakriti is Mayakya, that Avidyatmaka, that Kshetratmaka. So he's saying that Para and Apara Prakriti Sanyoga is the cause of the sansara. That is what he's mentioning here. What is he saying? That Madhusudana, yeah. So Sarva Karya Apekshaya Adhikatvat Karanam Mahat, that Mahatatva. सर्वकार्याणां वृद्धि हेतुत्वाद बुद्धि हेतुत्व रूप अहं ब्रह्मणत्वाद ब्रह्म अव्याकृतम that मायाख्य that प्रकृति त्रिगुणात्मिका माया that सत्व रजस तमात्मिका माया महद ब्रह्म तच्च मम ईश्वरस्य योनिर गर्भ आधान स्थानम. What is that गर्भ आधान स्थान? Like a man and a woman get married. The Garbha Adhana happens because of the Birya Sechana of that male member in the female person. Right? That's how the samsara starts. Here, actually, there is no male female. This is only a story. What is supposed to be said here is like this: that Sankalpa of Ishvara, when he accepts Maya as his Upadhi, Aham Bahusham Prajaya, let me create all these people. The moment he thinks that sankalpa, that very thing is that virya adhana, and that is the vija of the hiranyagarbha. Then the sutratma gets created, the hiranyagarbha creates this whole sansara. This is how it is the story. And this will be beautifully explained in the next verse. And sarvakaryanam buddhi hetutva rupa grihanatvat brahma avyakritam. Avyakrita is the prakriti tigunatmika maya mahad brahma. Mama Ishwarasya Yonihi Garbhadhana Stanam Tasmin Mahati Brahmani. What is that Mahat Brahma? That Maya Yoni. Garve Sarva Bhuta Janmakaranam Aham Bahusham Praja Eya Iti Ikshana Rupam. That Ichha Rupa, that very desire that I want to create this sansara. That is the Virya. Sankalpam dadhami dharayami. The very sankalpa itself is like the seed, that is like the virya, that bija, and which is established, that which is kind of laid there to ensure that the creation starts. Sat sankalpa vishayi koromi ityarthaha. Now, tat sankalpa vishayi koromi. That sankalpa I do. That sankalpa. That is, let there be a sansara. Let there be whole srishti. तथा ही कश्चित् पिता पुत्रम अनुसायनम बृहदि आहार रूपेण स्वस्मिन् लीनं शरीरेण युयुतिम योनो रेतः सेकपूर्वकं गर्भम आधत्ते. What happens? How the little boy is born to any person. In Chandogya Upanishad, I think I was discussing in the last class that how when we die we'll go up. So depends on what kind of papa punya we have done. We might have a few seconds or hours or years in Swargaloka. We are sent back when the punya phala goes. The anushaya, whatever the remaining karmas are there, they fall. Again, we come back to the earth plane. Through the same Dyuloko, Chandraloko, and the Akasa, Vayu, and we come back. There is rain. Through those raindrops, it comes to earth. And that Atma, that Jivatma comes. And then Jivatma will become Brihi. It becomes like crops or fruits or whatever. These crops or fruits are eaten by animals. Whichever animal eats that anushaya, that seed for jivatma, we will go and take the birth as that animal. If it's a good human being, he eats. Then that particular jivatma becomes the virya in that father. He hides in that father. Then he is reborn. This is technically they're explaining how we are reborn again and again. That means when we are eating food, he's saying that if a person who is a sannyasi, he eats that rice, that jivatma enters, but what will happen? He's a sannyasi, is not married, so he cannot be reborn. Then he becomes excreta and goes back to earth, and again he will be another some plant. So that is how again and again he is in inanimate form for thousands and thousands of births. That's how it's called 8.4 million yonis. A person travels before he's born as a human being again. It's a very difficult, eventual privilege that we have got being born as human beings as per the theological stories we hear. So the way the father, that particular Swasmin, that Brihadi, he does the Seka Karanam, he does that Garbhadana same way. He's saying Seka Prupakam Garbham Adate, Tasmasa Garbha Adhanat, Saha Putra Sarena Yujyate. Now that Jivatma, which is hiding in the father's body, that father eats some food grains, whatever, that Jivatma is hiding. Then the Jivatma enters that mother's yoni, that physical body, as Virya. Then he's reborn. The moment he joins the mother's body, he connects with that rajas of the raja, that seed which is in the mother, and then he's born as a child. The moment he starts having that physical form, there is a Kshetrajna Kshetra Sanyoga. This is how they have an imaginary story. Look at it scientifically now. The story is like simple like this. He will explain how it happens philosophically. He's saying, and he's saying, Tata Putra Shana Yujite Tadartham Cham Madhye Kalaladya Avastaya. They're saying that there is this Budbud Avastha. Before the baby becomes that embryo, there's a particular stage where it's just like Kalala Avastha. It's like embryonic form without any clarity, whether it's male or female, hands, legs, nothing have come out. That particular avastha, and he's saying kalaladi avastha bhavanti tatha pralayamai लीनम अविद्या काम कर्मानुशयवंतम क्षेत्रज्ञम सृष्टि समये भोग्येन क्षेत्रेण कार्यकरण संघातेन योजयितुम चिदाभासाख्य रियतः सेकपूर्वम मायावृत्ति रूपम गर्भम aham adadhami. This is the most important part. It's like this, that this pure consciousness, which is Atma, when it becomes Pratibimbita, that reflected consciousness is Jiva. That is all of us. Brahman or Ishvara alone is true. It is getting reflected. This reflection is actually in our Garbhadana. That pure God consciousness connects with the physical Karyakarana Sanghata, the Indriya in the physical form. And there is this mind which takes place, that Ahankara. That Chidabhasa, the name of that is Chidabhasa. The moment that particular thing happens, the Kshetrajna and Kshetra Sanyoga has happened. Then, the baby, then that embryo starts growing. And there is already consciousness in the child. When the consciousness enters, it becomes a human embryo. Similarly, if you look at it philosophically, that Jadavastha, where there is a connection with consciousness, it becomes a living being. That is how they are explaining it. That is the Chidabhasa, that mind. Without that mind, nothing. It's just like a pound of flesh inside the mother's uterus. Nothing comes out. Yojutam Chidabhasakhya Reta Sekapurvakam. That is the Virya, Reta. Sekapurvakam, Sechanam. He sort of is irrigating that particular Maya Vritti Rupam. And what is that Seka Karanam? It's like a Maya Vritti. That is a delusional, phenomenal reality which is assumed by this Ishvara Sankalapa. And this is just an imagination in order to explain how Sansara has been born. Garbham adadhami. Tadartham cha madhye akasa vayu tejo jala prithvivyadi utpati avastaha. And when you have that sanyoga, the same way Panchabhutas also kind of come into play. Tata Garva Adhana Sambhava Utpati, and then creation starts. Sarva Bhutanam. So Utpati Kasam, who Akanam, so he's Sarva Bhutanam, Hiranya Garvadinam, Bhavati He Bharata. Natu Ishvara Krita Garva Adhanam Bina Ityartha. Without Bhagavan or Ishvara as the Nimitta Karana. He's Sarva Niyamaka. He's the father. He will tell that in the next verse. Nothing is possible. So this whole Srishti, Ishvara is the Nimitta Karana. Maya, which is Ishvara Bhuta, Ishwariya, It's controlled by Ishvara. Ishvara has accepted Maya as his upadhi. So it is all a very amorphous, confusing story, isn't it? That Maya, does it have any existence? Can we see it? It's abhyakta. We cannot. We cannot know. It is not visible. It's like electric energy. We cannot see, but it lights up all the light bulbs, which means electric energy exists. There are different ways to know it. Similarly, this Maya, looking at the Karya, we can do Anumana. We can infer that there is some material cause, and that is avidya, that is the ignorance out of which all this appears is true. That is the Vedantic explanation. As we proceed further in more Vedanta we study, these things will become clearer and clearer. This was the verse number 3. And then verse number 4. सर्वयोनिषु कौन्तेय मूर्तयः सम्भवन्ति याः तासां ब्रह्ममहद्योनि रहं बीजप्रदः पिता. Sarvayonishu Kaunteya. So, if you look at all the yonis, all the Karanabhuta, whatever, Kaunteya, Murtayaha, whatever thing, the physical forms that you imagine, whether it is plant life or animal life, human life, whatever, Sambhavantiya, whosoever has become possible, Tasam, and in all of them, okay, so all of them, Tasam, Brahma Mahadyoni Aham, and then they have a father and a mother. Whatever we see in the Srishti, this whole phenomenal universe, every being, every murti, every being has a father and a mother. Who is that father? He's saying, Bija Pradaha Pita, Aham Bija Pradaha Pita, I am the Nimitta Karana. I give that seed because of which everything happens. Bhagavan is father. Who is the mother? Bhagavan's Mayatmaka Upadhi is the mother. There is no separate mother. This mother is not, doesn't mean God becomes man and woman both. No, that's also not true. Bhagavan is not doing anything. It is just a story of Srishti. This is an imaginary story. This imagination is there with loads and loads of symbolism. And that sort of opens up when we do more and more Chintana. He's saying that this Maya or Avidya is the mother. This Maya or Avidya doesn't exist independent of me. Because Sankhya Mata says the Prakriti or Maya or that Sakti is different from Purusha. Purushas are many. Vedanta says that Maya or that Avidya is Purusha Adhina. Purusha Prakriti, both are actually Prakriti for us. One is Para Prakriti, another is Apara Prakriti. Both are Ishvara Adhina. That Ishvara, when he wears that Jadugar Mukut, the Jadugar, the hat of Jadu, he becomes a Jadugar, he becomes Ishvara, and the Maya is an aspect of him. It has no independent existence. Through this Maya, he creates this Sansara. Has he actually created? Please think about it. He is saying the Jivas, all of us, think this reality is real because of our own ignorance. That means what Ishvara says, I did, I did, I did, ultimately this is how we look at them. That is what he's saying. तुम ऐसे मुझे समझते हो, इसीलिए वो थ्योरी देते हैं कैसे हुआ. माया माया के माध्यम से हमने बनाया. कहने का मतलब है तुम्हें जो सच दिखता है वो सच नहीं है. माया के कारण ये सब सच दिखता है. आप हमारे पे फोकस कर कर माया से जब विनिर्मुक्त हो जाओगे तब ये सब झूठ आपको त्रस्त नहीं करेगा. It will not affect you anymore. You will feel liberated from this. That is what. Let's look at how he's explaining. Brahma Mahadyoni. Mahadyoni is Maya. That is the mother. Father is me. And Maya is an aspect of me. So Shaktiman is one and the Bhagavan is creating everything. But this is a delusional creation. That's all he's saying. Sarva Yenishu iti. Deva Pitru Manushya Pasu. Mrigadi Sarva Yonishu Kaunteya Murteya. Whenever you look at whether it's Devata or Pashu or Manushya or Mruga, all the animals, antelopes and other things, those who live in the jungles, Sarva Yonishu in all physical forms. Okay, Kaunteya. Why is addressing as Kaunteya? To remind Arjuna that you are also born from Kunti. You are also one product like that. Hey, Kaunteya, Murtaya Deha Sanstana Lakshana. all these physical foundations they have, these jivas. Murchita angavayava murtayaha. So if you take out the consciousness, murchita angavayava, these physical parts. Murtayaha sambhavanti yasam yasyaha tam murtinam. And, all these particular is not giving any particular semen or anything. It is just sankalpatmaka thing. Tasu api so pratibimba sya arpaita. That is the beautiful thing. He summarized this whole Vedantic thinking. The pratibimbasya arpaita. I give. It's like the sun is there, and the sun is reflected in a water body. That is the vija. Ishvara is causing that image to appear as another sun. The sansara appears as a reflection of that Brahman, appears as real. So, Swapratibhimbasya arpaita, giver of his own image, giver of his own reflection in this material. Jatha Purusha Bharyayam Anushay Samprikta Reto Nisinchati Tato Bharyataha Pindo Utpatihi. So, like for example, a man has physical contact, copulation with a lady, his wife, and that wife becomes mother. Pindo Utpatihi. Retoha Retasaha Retastatra Chaitanya Utpatihi iti, and then there is consciousness in that physical form. Chaitanya Vishistasya Pindasya Pitaham Mata cha Maya ityarthaha. So the mother is Maya, father is Ishvara. That is the simplest way we can make sense of this whole thing. More or less the same thing is mentioned by, he just mentions that there are different kinds of Murtaya, Jarayuja, Andaja, Swedaja, Udvijaja. He's separating that Saturvida. Swedaja is these small insects and all born out of sweat or liquid forms. Andaja, the birds and all. And Jarayuja, all the mammals. And Udvidaja, all the plants. Vedena, Vilakshana, Vivida, Sanstanaha, Tanavaha, physical forms. Okay, so to be very simple and very brief, all the Jiva Vargas that we see Maya or avidya is the mother, Ishvara is the father. That is how the Prakriti Purusha Sanyoga has happened. The Chidabhasa and the Sarira, they get connected, Jiva Utpatti happens. This is how it is explained. Now, the next question will be, Ke Gunaha, Acha, you had told me that you will give that this is the best knowledge. So, what are those gunas? Katham Nibadhanti, how they bind all of iti uchyate sattvam that you had mentioned earlier, that these gunas bind us, and therefore I'll give you the jnana so that you can fight off the influence of these trigunatmika prakriti. Therefore, you must know, we must know how to fight it. Before we go to understand these three gunas, there are a couple of lines you need to understand. You know, the Sankhya people say that Purusha Prakriti, and Prakriti is independent, Purusha is independent, and this Prakriti is Swatantra and can create. She is not, she is Jada. So Purusha Sannidhi gives the Prakriti agency so that it creates this whole samsara for Bhoga and Apavarga, Bhoga and Mukhya of the Purusha. That is what Sankhya says. That is refuted in the verse number 3 by this particular Bhagavan says, Madhya. This Prakriti is mine. That means Prakriti is not Swatantra. That is refuted. Another. Swabhuta Madhya. Then this Brahma, Parinamavadis, the Vishishtadvaitis, say the Bhagavan has created the sansar out of his own body. But here Shankaracharya says, Swarupatvena Swabhutatvam Varayati. That Bhagavan himself is creating out of his physical body. No, the sansara is not born out of Bhagavan's physical body. It is just a projection. That is what he sees in. And Ishwarim Chissaktim Vyavartayati Trigunatmika. And then that Chit Sakti and this particular, this Jadatmika, this Sattvatama Rajas, this is different, and it's not same as the Ishwara Chit Sakti. This is how Anandagiri says. Now let's come to verse number 5. Sattvam rajastama iti gunaha prakriti sambhavaha nibadhanti mahavaho dehinam avyayam. Dehinam avyayam. Dehina kaun hai? Dehi, the one who lives in the deha, the karyakarana sanghata. That is that atma, that consciousness, which is avyaya. Bhagavan has mentioned that in chapter number 13, that the Kshetrajna is one and it is avyaya. It is avivakta but appears as vibhakta in different kind of physical forms that he has mentioned. Therefore, he is saying, Dehe dehinam avyayam. The Atma is one and avyaya and it's achala. It's not vyeti because the Prakriti created Maya and Tatkarya, and the works of Maya, they undergo changes. This Chaitanya doesn't undergo any changes. That Sakhi Chaitanya, no changes. It is avyaya. And the Vikari, they undergo changes. The Atma is Nirvikara, and it is just watching. It's Achala, Nirvikara, Nirguna. So it is Abhyaya also. Now you will ask, when you are saying Achala, and earlier you said no lipyate, I am never involved. That's what you said in 13th chapter. You are saying something exactly different. You're saying Nibadnanti Mahavaho. It binds them. Who? Sattvam, Rajas, Tama, Iti Gunaha. These are the three gunas. And these gunas are coming out of what? Prakriti Sambhavaha. That are Maya Sambhava. That means these are aspects of Maya. They are products of Maya. This Sattva, Tama, and Rajas. What do you mean by guna? Now look at this one. This has red color. And what is gunatvam? Dravya asrayatvam. The red color cannot exist independently. It requires a physical form on which we can see the red color, like the straight line in the pen. The straight line also cannot independently exist, right? So the qualities, it has certain smell. The smell cannot exist independently. It requires a physical foundation on which this will appear. The sattva, tama, rajas are not gunas like that. They are not the nyaya, vaishaika, darsana, that paribhasita guna. No, they are not qualities in that sense. They are just used as gunas. This is a particular paribhasha. This guna in English will mean disposition, different kind of disposition. It is different from qualities in English, like red color is a quality. And then guna, gunina. The guni and the guna. The dravya is the guni. It has this quality, so it is guni. A guy is intelligent, so we call it he has intelligence. Therefore, his intelligence. He has guna, therefore he's guni. That guna guni bheda here we are not discussing because sattva tama rajas is not qualities in that sense. What are they? We are discussing in this verse. He's saying ke gunaha katham nibadhanti iti uchyate sattvam iti. Sattvam rajas tama ityevam namano. These are the three names by which we understand this trigunatmika maya. Guna iti paribhashikaha. This is a manner of speaking. This one definitional way of dealing with it. This is not sabdo na rupadivat dravyasritaha. Now, these particular paribhashika sabda, it is just one way of referring to them as guna. They are not dravyasrita, like red color, like loving father. No, it's not like that. Nacha guna guninor anyatvam atra vivakhitam. The guna and guni, dravya and guna are two different, in not in that sense. Tasmad guna eva nitya paratantraha. They are paratantra. They are always dependent. Paratantra in front, they are not swatantra. Why? Because they are prakriti sambhava. They are born out of this prakriti. They cannot independently exist. Sattva cannot stay in air. Rajas also cannot stay in air. And they are all born out of prakriti, or that maya. Kshetragyam, that chaitanya, that purusha. That purusha here is para prakriti. Kshetragyam. Prati avidyatmakatvat kshetragyam. नाउ क्षेत्रियों को कैसे बांधता है, सवाल तो उठेगा, बांधने का मतलब क्या होता है? वो कह रहे हैं कि दिस पर्टिकुलर क्वालिटीज, सॉरी डिस्पोजिशन, सत्वतम रजस, दे आर अविद्यात्मक. व्हाई? born out of avidya, the born out of maya or avidya. Therefore they have avidyatmakatvat kshetragyam nivadhanti eva, as if they are binding. Now what happens is there is a brilliant student. He is going to write an examination. He will come out toppers, everybody knows. Then what you do, you give him some sleeping tablet before he goes to examination. Will he top in the examination? He is going to fail in the examination. Why? Because he'll take Monte some kind of antihistamines and all. He's feeling sleepy. Then you can say, I have bound him up. He cannot pass the test. Have you bound him up? No. There is a way in which you have slowed down his ability to work out the problems in the examination hall. Similarly, when our intelligence, our ability to take up correct decisions and have that discrimination gets blinded by ignorance, faulty understanding, can we say that we have been bound up by Sattva Tama Rajas? That is what is intended here. That is what he's saying. Kshetragyam nivadhanti eva tasmad tamah aspadikritya tam aspadikritya atmanam pratilambhate. So, they cheat that atma. How? So, tam aspadikritya atmanam. That is how this whole thing is, that they become a superimposition. They become a adhyasa. There is a clouding of the consciousness. That is what is intended here. Pratilambhate iti nibadhanti eva nibadhanti iti uchyate. Devcha prakriti sambhava. They are born out of prakriti or maya. Bhagavan Maya Sambhava, and Bhagavan Maya Sambhava nibadhanti eva he Mahavaho. So he Mahavahu usko बांध देते हैं. Why is he using the word Mahavahu? He is also telling him, unless and until you become Atma Sachetana, you become aware of yourself as pure consciousness, your physical power only bind you up, because it will have some superimposition. You will think you are a very powerful man. That is the first way to fall in Vedanta sadhana. Mahanto samartha tara ajanu pralambu vahu yasya saha mahavahu. If somebody has very strong, powerful hands, ajanu lambita, I don't know how scientifically that is good, that you have till the knees. Maybe that was the imagination those days. Now science says if a person has shorter hands, he's much faster in boxing. He Mahabaho Dehe Sarire Dehinam Dehavantam Avyayam. The Dehinam, Dehavantam, the person who owns the body, who is, that is the consciousness. This consciousness gets clouded. Avyayatvam cha uktam anaditva the sloke earlier. Anaditva nirgunatva. That is avyaya. That we have done in the last chapter. No. Dehi na lipyate ityuktam. You have earlier mentioned that the Dehi, the Atma, that Chaitanya Swarupa, is never lipta, it never gets trapped in any action that happens. Because they are all, the Sarva Karmani, whatever, they are all happening because of gunas. The Atma is never affected. That is what you said in chapter 7, 13. Now you are twisting it. You are saying that these gunas are also binding up the Atma. I am completely confused, the student says, and the teacher is explaining. Tat katham iha nivadnanti iti anyatha uchyate. You are saying something different. Parihritam asmadivihi iva sabdena nibadnanti iva uchyate. So, as if you forget, you are defeated by the game of these things, So that is how this particular thing is being mentioned. That's all he's saying. Now let's look at Madhusudana, Tadevam Nirishwara Sankhya Nirakarena, because they didn't believe in Ishwara, the traditional Sankhyas, Kapila Muni and all. And that Purusha and Prakriti Sansara is created, Bhagavan, by saying that Madhya Prakriti, that is Mama Adhina. You can say it only if Ishwara exists, and therefore this is the Nirishwaravadi Sankhya Mata has been Tiraskrita here. Nirakaranena Khetra Khetragya Sanyogasya Ishwara Adhinatvam Uktam, that Ishwara Adhinatvam, that is mentioned. That it is under the game of Ishwara. Idanim kasmin guni katham shangaha keva gunaha katham bhate badnanti iti uchyante. What are these qualities, the dispositions, these three gunas? How many are they? How do they bind up the Atma? Is explaining Sattvam ityadina. No anyam Nanyam ityataha prag chaturdasavi. Now, this Sattvatama Rajas, he will continue to speak from verse number 5 till verse number 19. There are 14 slokas in which Bhagavan will explain how these Sattva, Tamas and Rajas, they play the game of hide and seek with us. That he will explain. Okay, and then he's saying, okay. Sattva, Sattvam Rajas Tamaha ityevam नामानुगुणः नित्यपरतन्त्रः पुरुषं प्रति सर्वेषाम् अचेतनान् चेतनार्थत्वात्, sanghatasya pararthatvat. Wherever there is a sanghata, there is a karya, whatever is happens, there must be somebody who is a bhogi, bhokta, because of which you make a dosa. There must be somebody to eat it. So the Prakriti is creating all this for Purusha, Sanghatasya Pararthatvat. So the Achetana Varga is created. It will not make anything if there is no Chetana Varga. If there is no consciousness, this Srishti has no meaning. If Chetana Arthatvat, Natu Vaisisikanam Rupadivat Drabyasvitaha. So these gunas, Sattvatama Rajas, is not like the Vaisesika Darshana gunas, like like red color and all those things. Nacha, like Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, Sparsa, all these are gunas. It's not like that. Guna Guninur Anyatvam Atra Vivakitam Nacha. And Guna and Gunina, they are also not different because they are sort of having that Tadatma Samada. Gunatrayatmakatvat Prakriti. Because that, okay, because the Prakriti itself is having these three gunas. Tari Katham Prakriti Sambhava ityuchyate. How do you say these Trayanam Gunanam Samyavastha Prakriti Maya? That Maya, is in a balanced state. When you have Sattvatam and Rajas in a perfect state of balance, Ishvara Sankalpa intervenes, then the Prakriti starts creating Maya. Bhagavataha Tasyaha Sakasat. For Bhagavan, it creates what? Paraspar Angangi Bhavena. Anga Angi. Anga is the part, Sesa Sesi, and the Sesi is that particular thing, the Ketragya, the Ishvara. Vaishamyena Panirataha Prakriti Sambhava ityuchyate. So Angi is Maya. Anga is the Sattva, Tama, and Rajas. They are Angas. Angi is Maya, that mother of these three. Techa Dehe Prakriti Karye Sarira Indriya Sanghate Dehinam. तो शरीर और इंद्रिय ये बन गए उसमें ये तीनों तत्व आकर आत्मा को बांध लेते हैं। कहने का तात्पर्य क्या है? He's explaining here. देहिनम देह तादात्म्य अध्यासापन्नम जीवम. That jiva is always mukta, no lipyate. That is correct. Abhyaya, that is correct. Then how he gets bound up, how he gets caged in this sarira, that is explaining. Jivam apannam, adhyasa apannam. Yes, there is superimposition. We have started beginning to say, we start telling us ourselves, we are a man, we are a woman. Adhyasa has happened. We are already limiting ourselves as a man or a woman, rich and a poor. That is how the bandhana happens. He is explaining this. Paramarthata sarva vikara shunyatvena avyayam. Fundamentally, we are all free and we are avyaya, siddha, nitya, sattva, suddha, buddha, mukta all the time. But once adhyasa comes, means we are bound up. That is what is explaining. So Kampadimattaya is saying Nibadhanti Nirvikaram Eva Santam So Vikaravattaya Upadarsayati Eva Bhrantya Jalapatrani Eva Divi Sitam Adityam Pratibimba Adhyasena So Kampadimattaya. Like for example, the sun is above. There is no kampana in it. It reflects in water. The moment is reflected in water, this water there are waves. The sun, like on a river, there is some movement of water, or on a pot of water, or maybe there's a lake. There are some winds and there are small waves or ripples on that water surface. The sun appears also to sort of dangle on that water surface. Actually, the sun doesn't move, but dhyayativa lilayativa, it appears as if it is meditating, as if there is that Bhuttana dasa and then Samadhi dasa. This is how it appears, that it is thinking, it is physically becoming active. Jalapatrani iva divastitam adityam pratibimba adhyasena, because of his own image. Swakampadi mattaya, as if there is movement in it. In the water surface, it becomes physically dynamic. Yathaja paramarthiko bandho nasti. Fundamentally, there is no bandhana. All of us are mukta. Tathaja vakhyatam prak sarirastupi kaunteya na karomi na lipyate na karoti na lipyate. Actually, the Atma neither doing anything nor is lipta in anything. It is always liberated. However, in Vyavahara, in that Ajnana Dasa, it appears as if it is trapped in everything. That is what he is mentioning. Okay, and then we will do the next verse, that what are these three gunas and how it happens. We'll do that. Tomorrow is a Sunday, but we have had 2-3 days gap. So, Chinmay, what do you say? We can have classes tomorrow for a break, or we'll do it after a gap of 1 day? Let's have classes. Yeah, so we'll have classes tomorrow. So, meanwhile, I'm putting an end to the YouTube.